Kennedys don't like me. I mean, it wasn't like being in Washington where what the Kennedys thought mattered. I care what the Kennedys thought. I was there in Saigon. I knew people who were dying. Saigon was a self-contained universe. If they didn't like me back in Washington, in that wonderful world of Camelot, I didn't give a rat's ass. I mean, I was here. My loyalties were here. My job was, I always thought I thought the war was being lost. But the one thing that I always understood was it wasn't about being popular. I didn't care where Washington liked me, or even my editors, who were made sometimes nervous. What was important was that my readers, if the VC walked into Saigon one day, which I thought was going to happen sooner or later, not be surprised. That was my mission, just to let my readers know. And that I understood something else, which was that intuitively, I was only 28 years old when I went there. I understood that I was heir of a great tradition, that by chance history had catapulted me to a moment where journalism mattered. That there are moments, you know, I mean, there are a lot of stories, terrific stories, you have a great time. Civil rights movement, and journalism mattered in the civil rights movement because, you know, this was a country trying to define itself for a modern era and coming out of a feudal past. But in Vietnam it mattered as well because the government was lying. When the government doesn't tell the truth, then the power of journalism goes up. If you have something like Vietnam, which is bastardized, the wrong war in the wrong time in the wrong place, where Lyndon Johnson takes you to war by stealth. First he campaigns in 1964 against Goldwater, saying, I will not send American boys to do what Asian boys should do for themselves, and then says it's going to be a small war, and meanwhile he's already given the okay for 500,000. And he snookers the Congress with not with a declaration of war, but with the Tonkin Gulf, which was really a rather bastardized attempt to legitimize the war. When none of this works, it's inevitable they're going to turn on the press. And the interesting thing was, I mean, what they tried to make it out as if this were a press problem. It was never a press problem. It was a policy problem. One of the things that I am reminded of is the constancy of the pressure against us on the part of the U.S. government. The military, the embassy in Saigon, investigations of who our sources were, trying to find out who was talking to us, constant leaks against us in Washington, trying to undermine our personal credibilities, attacks that were really ad hominem. I mean, would say in effect that you were left-wing, that you were a sissy, that you'd never been out on battle. I think I'd went out on something like 56 missions when I was there. I mean, I don't have the exact number anymore, but it was quite a lot. I mean, I knew that in order to cover that war, I had to go out all the time, and I also knew that I was going to be attacked if I was negative. I mean, I think it was very, very personal and very ugly, but that's what you get paid for. I mean, you don't get paid. One of the things that had immunized me, I was very lucky by the time I got there. I'd been a reporter for 6 or 7 years, and I understood, having been in the civil rights reporter, been in the movement in those days and in the South and working for Southern papers, that if you covered events like that, it wasn't going to make you popular. I mean, I think one of the best things about being a journalist is it allows you to be a player in great events without needing to be popular. I still work as hard as I did when I was young, and I think part of that is Vietnam, the good fortune to go there, to do well, to be lucky enough to live when others who were just as good as you were and weren't quite as lucky died. I think the sense that your life is a privilege and that you were the beneficiary of something and therefore you owe it, I think that has always stayed with me, and so I've always continued to work hard, and I think it's because I think my life is a gift, and some of that is due to Vietnam.